What's going on, beautiful people? I'm creating this video specifically for the man who is spiritually curious. Maybe he's seen this idea of spirituality floating around. Maybe he's read The Power of Now or seen friends who are benefiting from spirituality. And now he wants to understand how he can approach spirituality in a way that feels good for him and develop his own understanding of spirituality. So in this video, I'm not going to be preaching and telling you what to believe. Instead, my intention is to bring spirituality to a level where you can remain grounded while exploring it on your own. Because so often we can see spirituality as this mystical, abstract, far out, woo-woo thing. And I hope in this video to provide some practical applications, real world benefits, and tools that you can arrive at through the path of spirituality. For many men, especially the men who have a little bit of resistance to spirituality, we are often caught within our heads. We overthink and we over-rationalize. And spirituality is not about abandoning logic or rationality. It's about expanding our toolkit. When a problem can no longer be solved on the level of the mind, we need other tools that we can lean into. Einstein told us that a problem cannot be solved at the same level of thinking it was created with. So what spirituality allows us to do is to commit to practices like meditation, mindfulness, time in nature, and breath work to create a space where we can tap into the wisdom of our body, our gut instinct, our intuition, our ways of thinking beyond logic, so that we can find creative solutions to the issues that life brings up. And we can actually solve our problems beyond the level of thinking that created them. Maybe you are a great thinker. Maybe you are a wonderful problem solver, but my guess is that there are areas of your life or things happening outside of you that are difficult for you to understand. And if that's the case, spirituality invites us to become more well-rounded so that we can tap into things like emotional intelligence and embodied awareness, that we can actually give up the attachment to trying to control everything and understand everything, and instead turn our attention within where we can find more peace, because our own doorstep is the only one that we can truly sweep clean. And spirituality gives us the tools to do that. There's also a story that's present in the collective that spirituality is weak or feminine. And I know where this comes from those spiritual folks who draw tarot cards or stick a feather in their hat. And spirituality is not about becoming weak or passive. It's actually about developing inner strength and resilience so that when life throws its inevitable challenges at us, we can recover better. And as we lean into spirituality, what might have been a 5-day, 2-week downward spiral becomes just a few moments of regulation and reconnection with self. So spirituality allows us to show up in a way with more strength and inner clarity, so that when life is whirlwinding all around us, our inner foundation is strong and our feet are grounded. We trust our ability to move through these issues in a way that is clear, that is forward, and that will allow us to emerge with the lessons integrated. And when I talk about integrating lessons, something else that spirituality helps us see as well is when life is giving us lessons, when life is presenting teachers and medicine for us. So in practices like mindfulness, we allow ourselves to create space in our lives. We allow ourselves to zoom out and see the bigger picture so that when life is introducing a learning for us, we do not miss it. And in that way, life becomes this beautiful classroom where we are continuously delivered the lessons and insights that we need to become fuller and more whole versions of ourselves. And for the man who's hearing this that says that sounds nice but still feels some hesitation, spirituality doesn't ask you to believe anything to begin with. You do not need to be spiritual to start. All that's being asked of you is that you approach spirituality in the same way that you would approach any other subject that you're learning. To come in with an investigative and open mindset, not to download and assume everything you learn as true, but to make your own distinctions, to try the practices, meditation, mindfulness, nature bathing, breath work, and see how it makes you feel. Spirituality is not about information, it is experiential. And if it allows you to be 1% happier or healthier in your life, it may be that a spiritual practice is something that you do want to integrate. So we're not asking ourselves to believe anything from the jump. We don't need to be spiritual. We just need to be curious. We're also in this amazing time where spirituality is more welcoming to a rational mind because we have all this science beginning to emerge that supports the benefits of spirituality. We know that meditation helps rewire the mind, reduce anxiety, and create feelings of connection and compassion between us and other people. There's some really wonderful work going on. Dr. Joe Dispenza has a lot of wonderful research on this. And there's also another woman, Lisa Miller. She has a book called The Awakened Brain, who has dialed in a lot of really compelling research. And I'm going to share some of it with you now so you know there's going to be some large words because I'm going to be talking about areas of the brain that are activated and deactivated by spiritual practice or spiritual experiences. So just hang with me here. I'm actually going to read some notes that I've taken because these are big words for me as well. And it's research. So this study, it focused on the brain and what happens during spiritual experiences. And when I say spiritual experiences, what we're talking about in this study included prayer and religious services, time in nature, where the participants felt a sense of unity between themselves and their environment. And also there were a couple examples of sporting events and playing music, times when the participants had experiences of going beyond the body and into the music or into the cheering crowd. So during these spiritual experiences, a few activities emerged in the brain, and these were studied through fMRI. Is first, there was a deactivation of a part of the brain called the default mode network. And what the default mode network is responsible for, as well as some good things, is rumination, is these incessant cycles of thinking that so many of us get caught up in and that pull us away from perception of the present moment. So this default mode network turned off during these spiritual experiences, and that's like the little self-obsessed, worrying little self bowing out and backing out. There were also clear patterns of activation in the ventral attention network. And our brains have two attentional networks, the dorsal network and the ventral network. They interact with each other in a dynamic way. And the dorsal attention network is our top-down attention. So it filters in incoming information. And while this is helpful in us making sense of the world and keeping focused on our tasks, it also filters out unintentional information. During this study, it was found that the spiritual experiences engaged the ventral attention network, making us available to information outside of our immediate conscious awareness or control. And this is where we receive flashes of insight or clarity. These epiphany moments is when the ventral attention network is turned up, and spiritual experience does that. I talked earlier about how life presents these lessons and teachings and medicine for us, and when the ventral attention network is on, that's when we notice these lessons in medicine. It's where we see that the world is alive and that life is talking to us. In addition, there is also an activation of the frontotemporal network, which is implicated in processing representations of boundaries between us and others. So this is where we feel the warm, loving embrace of others and of life. It's where we feel supported and loved. And the final thing that these scientists noticed in the study of the brain and spirituality is that there was reduced activation in the inferior parietal lobe. And that's where we navigate perceived distinctions between self and others. So what this suggests is that when we're having a spiritual experience, our identification with our physical self becomes more relaxed, and our perception of boundaries between ourselves and others become more diffuse. So we know that we matter, we belong, and we are never alone. And this has all been measured through science in the brain. None of this is about theory. None of this is about assuming the beliefs of others. In fact, it's about developing your own experience of spirituality. And so an invitation that I have for you is to connect with your higher power. Maybe as a journaling exercise, write down what your higher power is, maybe how your higher power supports you, and find a word that feels good for you. Maybe it's more of a concept of this infinitely intelligent organizing force that has allowed all of us to be constructed from millions and billions of cells to have lungs and a brain and eyes. There was a Nobel Prize winning physicist who said that the chances of us being here in human bodies is roughly the same as the chance of a tornado whipping through a junkyard and leaving behind a Boeing 747. So maybe that's your higher power that made all this possible. Maybe your higher power is the universe. Maybe it's source. Maybe it's spirit. Maybe it is nature. That's one place definitely where you can find a spiritual experience, is time alone or in silence in nature, with the sun, with the plants, the animals, the rocks, the breeze. If you're looking for a spiritual experience of your own, nature. So when developing your own understanding of spirituality, nobody can tell you what's right for you. Spirituality is something that emerges from within. It's not anything that anyone can give to you or that you need to accept from anywhere outside of yourself. It comes from within. Ultimately, what spirituality offers us is the ability to feel perpetually loved, supported, and guided through the peaks and valleys that life will inevitably offer us. It allows us to expand our awareness to see the beauty in all things, not just the things that seem pleasant at first glance. It allows us to be more resilient and courageous in the face of challenge, and it allows us to know that we are never alone, to see the similarities and support that's all around us. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope that you're inspired, or at least curious, to explore your own approach to spirituality and see how it can benefit your life personally.